What's going on, guys? So today we're going to go ahead and make an Indeed bot. So I'm going to tell you right before we start that this one was kind of interesting because the Indeed website is kind of a pain in the ass to get around. So we're going to go ahead and I'll show you what I got so far. I'm going to tell you right now it's not completed, but there's a lot of features that you could potentially use to say scrape jobless postings, put them into machine learning clustering algorithms to determine, what the kind of to learn what the kind of trends are in postings these days. You can go ahead and feed them into mapping, say, resumes into jobs if you're trying to build a website that's like essentially trying to fit people perfectly to jobs. So there's a whole lot of different applications for this, and this is kind of a bot for navigating the Indeed website. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it now. Now, initially, the goal was to get it to be a fully automated bot for applying. However, the problem is there's a lot of if-thens. So some of these companies have questions you have to answer. Some of these companies require you to go to their website to apply. And basically, it was a huge pain. So this is as far as we got here. It gets to the name, fills out that, the phone number, and then it's unable to find these elements. So basically, these elements here, for whatever reason, the driver was not able to locate them. And believe me, I tried a lot of different things. There's probably other ways to do it, and I would encourage you to try to do it yourself and try to figure it out, because I spent a good, probably half an hour trying to figure out how to get these things to try to how to select these fields, and I couldn't find them by name, couldn't find them by ID, and whatnot. But if you can find them, if you can select them, I tried focusing this window, bunch of different shit. But if you can select them and you can find them, then I'd recommend it. And because you can apply to 100 jobs right off the bat, and it's definitely doable. It's just going to take a little bit more time, and I just didn't want to put all that time into it, given that I already have a job. So anyways, I'm going to show you guys what I got. If you can get it to the choose file and upload that file, that's simple to do. You send keys to that. Anyways, we'll go to the code now and talk about the code and learn some Python. So let's go ahead and do that. And anyways, what it was doing, I suppose we could watch it one more time. What it was doing essentially is it navigates to the LinkedIn website, and then we feed it some parameters, and these parameters are the type of job we're looking for, and the city we're looking for it in, and the state that city exists in. So in this case, it was Python developers in Dallas, Texas. Now that could be anything. That's kind of parameterized by the bot, and that gives you your search results. You can always again search through those. It clicks the apply now button, which brings us up this little pop-up, which seems to be this mysterious pop-up that evades all ways of finding things. So anyways, the way that I was actually able to type in those keys, we'll discuss that and whatnot, and we'll do this all now. So essentially, again, Python Project Basics. The Python Project Basics are you have a virtual environment which creates an isolated directory in your current working directory for installing your Python packages. You basically keep those isolated from the global package space, quote unquote, but essentially your global Python installation. So when you're working with multiple projects, you don't have any kind of package version overlap. So then we have these packages here. We have two from the Python standard library that are OS and Time. OS is for making adjustments to the operating system, the structure of the operating system, and such as making folders, navigating to different paths and whatnot, like checking if folders exist. Time is for when we're making our web requests. So we basically go ahead and whenever we're making requests to the website, we want to make sure that we allow the results to come back in before we actually go ahead and try to find some elements on the page, or we're going to get tangled up. Then we've got Selenium, and Selenium is a library for, again, manipulating the node elements that exist on the document object model, which makes up majority of your web pages that you see. So, or all of the web pages you see. So essentially, let's go ahead and talk about the bot now itself. So we have a class essentially, and this class contains about 6 or 7 methods. All right, and we have got a fair amount of documentation. So we can go ahead here, and I'm going to link to the code in the description because I do encourage you guys to go and try to figure this out because I don't know. I was a little bit annoyed, to be honest, but I might just try to figure it out just because of that. But anyways, we'll see what we can do. So anyways, the Indeed bot, we have this class Indeed bot. On the initialization, it goes ahead and it sets these 4 fields. So we have the self.driver right here, self.query string, which is a string type. We have self.jobs, which is a list type or an array. And then we have a self.express apply jobs, which is an array. So initially, my initial thought was to find the jobs that you could do the quote unquote express apply or instant apply, which means you have a lot less of those if then conditionals. I don't have to navigate to company websites to apply. I don't have to go to do these different things. So that was the initial thought. So that's kind of why that is there. So yeah, the Chrome driver, that is your interface for sending commands to and from this Google Chrome instance that launches when we run this program. That is the meat of the program essentially. And then this query string is what is used for searches. So when you search for anything on the internet, essentially you're posting in a query string, and that query string is a sequence of letters and numbers. And that sequence of letters and numbers maps to some server that is serving up that website, and the specifics that go in there, such as say the job, the city, the state, etc., dictate the response that comes back from that backend server when you're visiting that website. So we have the query string there, and what we do is we actually inject the search parameters, the city and the state, into that query string, and then we just immediately target that query string with the Chrome driver. So yeah, then we've got our def nav. Nav just navigates to a given URL. We use this frequently within the program just to move around pages, and then it just goes ahead and makes a call to the Chrome driver, and then calls time.sleep for 3 seconds while the page loads, and then you can navigate to the page, or then you can manipulate the page results, we'll say. We have a private method called convert query. We won't go to that yet because that's not what we start with, but what we do is essentially the first method that you're going to call. We'll actually go down here and check it out. So the first method that you're going to call, we have initially a profile. We'll talk about this, but you create the instance of the Indeed bot. You go ahead and you create a query, and that query goes ahead and it has things like, okay, Python developer. So this would be our query has our keywords, our city, and our state. Right, so we have our Python developer in Dallas, Texas, and now you can put these for anything. You can put whatever job you want in whatever location you want, and it's going to go ahead and make that search for you. And then you can go ahead and whatever, scrape those things or whatnot, or try to select those obnoxious elements. And then we have the ID bot, or then we have this find express job. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and look at this query function, so we find out exactly what's going on here. Then we're going to look at this find express jobs function, and then we're going to look at this apply to express jobs function, and we're going to try to do this. So that's kind of the sequence, the linear sequence of functions that are occurring in this program. So let's go ahead and look at that query function. So our query function is right here. And essentially what our query function does is it takes, again, 3 parameters. It takes the job keywords, it takes the city keywords, and it takes the state keywords. Okay, and then it goes ahead and it calls self.convert query with those 3 parameters. So there's a certain syntax for how the query string is formulated when you're making that search or that call to the Indeed backend API. And when that specific syntax, we want the way that we pass parameters to this query function to be invariant to that specific syntax. So we have a special method that actually takes them in their whatever formulation they might be in, uppercase, lowercase, and convert them to the formulation that's required, or the syntax that's required for making the query itself. So we can go ahead now and look at that convert query function. And that convert query function, as you might expect, takes job, city, and state, and it returns job, city, and state. So what we do for job here is we take the job and we say we're going to split it on the spaces, which will make an array for us essentially. So if we have our job coming in and it looks like Python programmer, then what this is doing is it's splitting it, so then job would look like this, look like Python programmer, and then we're actually rejoining it, so then it's going to look like this, Python programmer. All right, so that's going to be the output. It takes things that are formulated in a regular old way that you might want to express yourself, converts it into array, and then rejoins that array with a plus, which is the syntax for how the query string is formulated for hitting the backend API of Indeed. Then we're taking city, and we're taking city and converting city to lower. So when we call city equals city.lower, what's happening there is, again, we want to be invariant to the uppercase or lowercase of the city. And again, I didn't test this specifically to know if it makes a difference, but this was the way that it appeared to me when I made an initial search on Indeed. So here we can go ahead here and say that we have a little bit of a check here, kind of a gate, we'll say, and this gate checks to ensure that the state code is formulated as like, say for California CA or Texas TX or Connecticut CT, right? So if the length of state is not equal to, we'll raise an exception saying that state must be a two-letter code, and this is an important fundamental thing to consider in programming. You want to be a defensive programmer, and what I mean by that is not getting like offended and shit. Like basically, a defensive programmer basically considers all the ways and all the potential attacks that might essentially, we'll say, all the potential attacks that might essentially, we'll say, dirty your input in a sense. So when you are programming defensively, you're considering how the various permutations of inputs that might come into your function and how you can negate those so you always know exactly what you're working with. And that's what typing does in a lot of languages, is the typing allows you to really say, okay, I know exactly what I'm working with. There's no real, I know exactly the object I'm getting. Whereas with Python, we don't have that, that necessarily afforded to us out of the box. So then we go ahead and convert the state to the uppercase, which again is the syntax for the query string. And again, I don't think that upper lowercase matters in the case of the query string, but that is what we have there. So then we return job, city, and state. And then we see here that we have these variables ready to catch that return value. So job, city, and state are essentially converted into their proper syntax. Then we have them in these variables here. And then we go ahead and format the query string with the job, the city, and the state that we got after reformatting the initial input. So we can go up here and see self.queryString equals Indeed /jobs (Q) equals, and then in squiggly brackets job and L, I'm assuming for location, equals in squiggly brackets city, and then %2c plus equals state. So that is good there. And then we go ahead and navigate to that formatted query string, which will essentially deliver us to our search results. So if I was to go ahead and just call a sys.exit 0 here, and we'll go ahead and import sys. I believe that'll do it. And then I can go ahead and run this again. Then it should just navigate right to that page, and then it'll exit the program. I don't think I need to pass 0. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so then it just exits the program. So again, that's us taking the input that we create in our, and you can make this a good command line program rather than hard coding the input for the search query into the program itself, obviously. But essentially it takes that input and then goes to that page, and then I gotta go find that. There we go. All right, so that's what, and it formats the query string, and then we arrive at that page. So after that, we go ahead. So that's this query function. Then we're going to go ahead and call this find express jobs function. And what this find express jobs function is doing is it's going ahead and it's finding, this is me trying to fix the cutoff error from a previous video. Essentially here we've got this. So you see express apply. What it's doing is it's filtering the jobs by the express apply tag, essentially, that's applied there. So what it's going through is it's identifying all of these blocks that basically contain jobs. When I say block, it's kind of like these squares here. These are div tags, div elements, and it's identifying all the div elements that are jobs, and then it's going ahead and searching for this express apply tag inside of the div elements. So if it can find that express apply tag, then it's going to basically add that to a filtered list of the jobs that we then are going to try to apply to. That was the plan, because just to get the initial working prototype. So yeah, so that works like that. Let's see here. Let's see, where are we? Apply to Express Jobs. So yep, so we say for job, or nope. Find Express Jobs. That was it initially. So we say self.jobs. We're taking that variable that we set when we first initialized the class to an array, and we're basically saying self.jobs, and we're basically assigning it to all of the elements that the WebDriver can find with the job search and SERP with the elements with this class of job search. This element with the class of job search / SERP job card. All right, and then we go ahead and we say number of jobs, and we print the number of jobs that we found, the number of elements that have the job tag, and then we say for job in jobs, try and find that specific tag. All right. Holy crap! Excuse me, guys. Hello. Hey, I'm gonna call you back. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll call you back. Be down in a minute. That is my persistent friend. Okay, so now we go ahead here and we say job.find element by class name, and we're doing the job shelf container. And that is the tag that contains that express, the tag that contains that express, tag right here that we see, this express apply. So we filter them like that. And then we go ahead here and we say self.expressApply.append job. So if it has an express apply tag, we're going to essentially filter the list this way. We're trying to find the element. If it can't find the element, it's going to pass and keep iterating over the jobs that it found. If it can find the element, it's going to add it to the filtered list. And then we're going to go ahead and call another method after that. So after we find these express jobs, we go ahead and we say apply to Express Jobs, passing in this profile. And that's passing in the profile of the applicant. So in this case, I'm putting my name, my email, a fake number, and resume. That is also fake. If you actually look at it, and it says this is not a real resume. I was really hoping it was going to work. This is going to be kind of funny. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and apply to Express Jobs, and we're going to apply to Express Jobs passing in that profile. All right, so we're going to go ahead and find that. So apply to Express Jobs. So that's this function right here. And we've got this is where things get, this is a little more complex. We have a few things going on here. So again, we're printing the number of Express Jobs just because I wanted to make sure it was accurate. It was finding all the correct ones. And then we go ahead and say for job in the self attribute.apply jobs. So for jobs that are stored in this object of Express Apply jobs, essentially. Or in this object has an array. Let me reformulate that. This object has an array that is express apply jobs, and those express apply jobs were set by filtering all the previous ones. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead here and say self.process job, self.process apply button, and self.fill applicant form profile. And now these are all hidden methods. You see these this double underscore. That signifies, it used to be single underscore. I've seen double underscore used a little bit more frequently, but those signify private methods on the Python class. So when you have private methods on the Python class, essentially what that's doing is that's saying, okay, you're not meant to access these from outside of the object. These are purposely used only inside the object. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and say self.driver.findElement.id form action button continue.click, and this is where it was unable to get to. So self.processJob, we're going to go to that, and essentially what that is doing is it's finding an element by its tag name, and then it's going ahead and get the attribute, the href attribute. So that means we're going to this page, we're basically inspecting this. What it's doing is it's inspecting this, and it's inspecting this here. Oops, went too far. All right, but it's finding this a tag. So initially it's finding this div right here, right? So we've talked about these square divs, and it's finding this div. It's finding this a tag that exists on that div. And then what it's going to go ahead and do is take this URL here on this a. You see this a. We see here we've got this a target equals blank ID blah blah blah. What we really want is the href, because we don't want to open a new tab. We just want to strip off the href, and we want to go ahead, or the hyperlink basically, and navigate directly to that. And then there's a whole lot of other junk on there that we don't need, that are like tracking ID stuff for Indeed, and we can basically strip that off. Strictly take the job the job identifier, append that to the end of the Indeed URL. So we want https://www.indeed.com/page d/CLK ? MO = R and AD. So we don't need all of that. We only need like a little bit of piece of that. So we cut that off. So we say job href equals job.find element by tag name A. So we're taking the job element, that parent div, and we're finding the child A tag, and then we're going to go ahead and get the href attribute from that A tag. And then once we've done that, we're going to split it on the and from. So we have an array that basically splits up our URL, and then we have the part that's relevant to us, the part that's not. So we want to take at the 0 index of that array. So I don't know how this looks to you guys, but it should be the opposite. So the 0 index would be like the first one, and then we go ahead and we take that. And then we go ahead and navigate to that location, which brings us to the job page. All right, so that's our process job function. Then we have our self.__process apply button. And our process apply button goes ahead, and what this does is it finds the Indeed apply button on that new page that we just navigated to, and then it goes ahead and it clicks that, and then it's going to sleep for about 4 seconds, just to ensure that we have enough time for everything to load up properly and whatnot, and keep working well. So then we go ahead and we say self.__fill applicant form with passing in the profile, and that's that initial profile that we created down here. So we can go ahead here and see def__fill applicant form with self profile, and we're defining this args here. This is good convention for Python programming, essentially, is to define the type in one way or another. You can actually strictly define the type, or you can define it in your documentation, essentially, and that'll go ahead and do that. And then what we're doing is we're creating a variable called actions, and it's going to be an action chain. And this comes from the Selenium library as well. And this allows us to execute a sequence of actions independent of any targeted node on the page. So we essentially say actions.sendKeys, and we're sending the profile name plus a tab, email plus a tab, and then phone number plus a tab, which goes ahead and it brings us down all the way to the end there. So if we see this again, yeah, so while we're waiting for this, oh, there it goes. Okay. So again, Python developer, Dallas, Texas, with our formatted string that we got from our initial parameters we passed in, loads this, finds the apply now element, presses that, this screen loads, and then we go ahead and we execute our action chain independent of the element, since it autofocused that input field for us. And then we're hitting tab, tab, tab to increment down these fields here. So that's about as far as this got. Now, the most interesting part of this, I think, and the part I'm actually probably going to do another video on, is I want to scrape a lot of these job postings and essentially take these job postings and run some machine learning on there. Because what I think is interesting, you see companies like TripleByte, and actually a friend of mine is starting a company similar to that. And essentially what they're doing is they're trying to find developers and match them accurately with companies where they are going to be happy and stay for a good time. And essentially, I feel like I'm sponsoring or giving a shout out to these companies right now. But anyways, they try to match them with companies that you think you're going to be happy with, and then they take a good chunk of your not of your salary, but they take a good chunk of the deal in between that, and then that's how they're like middlemen essentially. But essentially, what's interesting about that is we can take these. What's interesting about that paradigm, we'll say, is we can take these job application postings, and what we can do is then scrape, say, LinkedIn and get a bunch of job profiles. And then we can take the job application postings for a specific company and find all the profiles of people that work at that company. And then we could actually create a classifier that maps their profiles to the company and basically learns a representation of essentially what candidates work at what companies. And you'd assume that in that there'd be some kind of latent implicit assumption in that representation that these candidates are well suited for those companies. Say we could filter by like people that have been working there for only a few years or whatnot. So that's what's interesting about that. And this is just a way that you can adjust this code pretty easily, just to be able to move around and visit these different pages in the website, scrape the text, find the element, get the attribute, or get the inner HTML from the description tags, and then just basically fill up a database, populate a database with those, populate a database using that LinkedIn bot that we created a couple of videos back, and then go ahead and build some machine learning algorithms some clustering algorithms. You do the clusters and then map the clusters to the jobs. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff we can do. So that might actually be something we do here. I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to look into how many requests it takes before you get banned, because you will eventually get banned using this on these websites. Not banned, but like it won't. I don't know what'll happen exactly, but it won't. It's not going to respond to requests. Essentially, it's going to detect you're using Selenium or detect you're using some kind of automation and essentially say no. So that's another thing I want to test and just see like where the upper limits of that are. So, anyways, guys, as always, thank you for watching. A thumbs up, subscribe would be great. Any video ideas that you guys have or anything that you want me to work on specifically that you're working on personally that might help you out, or like you just I think would be interesting, put it in the comments or send me an email, or I've got like I forget the name of it. Not Slack. Discord. I've got a Discord server set up, so you guys can and you can find that on the homepage in the top right corner of up near the little banner thing. So essentially, guys, yeah, thanks for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next one.